Good morning, good morning, good morning, guys. Welcome into my life. Now, I started this book on my Kindle and I thought, wow, you all know me by now. My eyes are always in a book. And I started this one a few days ago from my Kindle account and I thought, oh my God, I am sure you all are going to love this book. The title is a little bit, I want to say strong, a little bit colorful. So in the title, I have I have not written the last word, but you all know what it you all should know what that word might be based on the context. But anyway, good morning, guys. Welcome into the live. It's been a minute since we haven't been reading a book other than the Bible, and I know that we have been over the past year and a half, 2 years. We have been enjoying the reading of various novels. So today I'm going to be sharing this one with you. It's called The Subtle Ways to Not Give a You Know What. And I am loving it, and I believe you all will love it as well. So, without further ado, let us begin. Chapter 1 says, Don't try. Charles Bukowski was an alcoholic, a womanizer, a chronic gambler, a loot, a cheapskate, a deadbeat, and on his worst days, a poet. He is probably the last person on earth you would ever look to for life advice or expect to see in any sort of self-help book. Which is why he is the perfect place to start. Bukowski wanted to be a writer, but for decades his work was rejected by almost every magazine, newspaper, journal, agent, and publisher he submitted to. His work was horrible, they said, crude, disgusting, depraved even. And as the stacks of rejection slips piled up, the weight of his failings pushed him deep into an alcohol-fueled depression that would follow him for most of his life. Bukowski had a day job as a letter filer at a post office. He got paid shit money and spent most of it on booze. He gambled away the rest at the racetrack. At night, he would drink alone and sometimes hammer out poetry on his beat-out old typewriter. Often, he'd wake up on the floor, having passed out the night before. 30 years went by like this, most of it a meaningless blur of alcohol, drugs, gambling, and prostitutes. Then, when Bukowski was 50, after a lifetime of failure and self-loathing, an editor at a small independent publishing house took a strange interest in him. The editor couldn't offer Bukowski much money or much promise of sales, but he had a weird affection for the drunk loser, so he decided to take a chance on him. It was the first real shot Bukowski had ever gotten, and he realized probably the only one he would ever get. Bukowski wrote back to the editor, I have one or two choices. Stay in the post office and go crazy, or stay out here and play at writing and starve. I have decided to starve. Six Balls is here. Six Balls, how are you? Oh, you have read it already? Oh, good. Good. I just discovered it on my Kindle and I love it. I love it. So I decided to share it. Good to see you. Happy Tuesday morning to you, my sister. Upon signing the contract, Bukowski wrote his first novel in 3 weeks. It was called Simply Post Office. In the dedication, he wrote, "Dedicated to nobody." Bukowski would make it as a novelist and poet. He would go on and publish 6 novels and hundreds of poems, selling over 2 million copies of his books. His popularity defied everyone's expectations, particularly his own. Stories like Bukowski's are the bread and butter for a cultural narrative. Bukowski's life embodies the American dream. A man fights for what he wants, never gives up, and eventually achieves his wildest dreams. It's practically a movie waiting to happen. We all look at stories like Bukowski's and say, "See, he never gave up. He never stopped trying. He always believed in himself. He persisted against all the odds and made something of himself." It is then strange that on Bukowski's tombstone, the epitaph reads, "Don't try." See, despite the book sales and the fame, Bukowski was a loser. He knew it. And his success stemmed not from some determination to be a winner, but from the fact that he knew he was a loser, accepted it, and then wrote honestly about it. He never tried to be anything other than what he was. The genius in Bukowski's work was not in overcoming unbelievable odds or developing himself into a shining literary light. It was the opposite. It was his simple ability to be completely, unflinchingly honest with himself, especially the worst parts of himself, and to share his failings without hesitation or doubt. This is the real story of Bukowski's success, his comfort with himself as a failure. Bukowski didn't give up about success. Even after his fame, he still showed up to poetry readings, hammered and verbally abused people in his audience. He still exposed himself in public and tried to sleep with every woman he could find. Fame and success didn't make him a better person, nor was it by becoming a better person that he became famous and successful. Self improvement and success often occur together, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the same thing. Our culture today is obsessively focused on unrealistically positive expectations. Be happier, be healthier, be the best, better than the rest. Be smarter, faster, richer, sexier, more popular, more productive, more envied, the more admired. Be perfect and amazing and crap out 12-carat gold nuggets before breaking each morning while kissing your selfie ready spouse and 2.5 kids goodbye. Why 2.5 kids though? Is your spouse the other half, the half of a kid? I'm not sure what he meant by that, but it's funny. Then fly your helicopter to your wonderfully fulfilling job where you spend your days doing incredibly meaningful work that's likely to save the planet one day. But when you stop and really think about it, conventional life advice, all the positive and happy self help stuff we hear all the time, is actually fixating on what you lack. It lasers in on what you perceive your personal shortcomings and failures to already be, and then emphasizes them for you. You learn about the best ways to make money because you feel you don't have enough money already. You stand in front of the mirror and repeat affirmations saying that you are beautiful because you feel as though you are not beautiful already. You follow dating and relationship advice because you feel that you are unlovable already. You try goofy visualizations and exercises about being more successful because you feel as though you aren't successful enough already. Ironically, this fixation on the positive, on what's better, what's superior, only serves to remind us over and over again of what we are not, of what we lack, of what we should have been but failed to be. After all, no truly happy person feels the need to stand in front of a mirror and recite that she's happy. She just is. There's a saying in Texas, the smallest dog barks the loudest. A confident man doesn't feel a need to prove that he's confident. A rich woman doesn't feel a need to convince anybody that she's rich. Either you are or you aren't. And if you are dreaming of something all the time, then you are reinforcing the same unconscious reality over and over that you are not that. Everyone on their TV commercial wants you to believe that the key to a good life is a nicer job, or a more rugged car, or a prettier girlfriend, or a hot tub with an inflatable pool for the kids. The world is constantly telling you that the path to a better life is more, 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 and more. Buy more, own more, make more, more, be more. You are constantly bombarded with messages to give up about everything all the time. Give up about a new TV. Give up about having a better vacation than your coworkers. Give up about buying that new lawn ornament. Give up about having the right kind of selfie stick. Why? My guess, because giving up about more stuff is good for business. And while there is nothing wrong with good business, the problem is that giving too many is bad for your mental health. It causes you to become overly attached to the superficial and fake, to dedicate your life to chasing a mirage of happiness and satisfaction. The key to a good life is not giving up about more, it's giving up about less, giving up about only what is true and immediate and important. The feedback loop from hell. There's an insidious quirk to your brain that, if you let it, can drive you absolutely batty. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you. You get anxious about confronting somebody in your life. That anxiety cripples you, and you start wondering why you are so anxious. Now you're becoming anxious about being anxious. Oh no, doubly anxious. Now you are anxious about your anxiety, which is causing more anxiety. Quick, where's the whiskey? Or let's say you have an anger problem. You get pissed off at the stupidest, most insane stuff, and you have no idea why. And the fact that you get pissed off so easily starts to piss you off even more. And then, in your petty rage, you realize that being angry all the time makes you a shallow and mean person. And you hate this. You hate it so much that you get angry at yourself. Now look at you. You are angry at yourself, getting angry about being angry. You, you wall. Here, have a fist. Or you are so worried about doing the right thing all the time that you become worried about how much you are worrying. Or you feel so guilty for every mistake you make that you begin to feel guilty about how guilty you are feeling. Or you get sad and alone so often that it makes you feel even more sad and alone just thinking about it. Welcome to the feedback loop from hell. Chances are you have engaged in it more than a few times. Maybe you are engaging in it right now. God, I do the feedback loop all the time. I'm such a loser for doing it. I should stop. Oh my God. I feel like such a loser for calling myself a loser. I should stop calling myself a loser, shouldn't I? Oh, I'm doing it again. See? I'm a loser. Ah, calm down, amigo. Calm down. Believe it or not, this is part of the beauty of being human. Very few animals on earth have the ability to think cogent thoughts to begin with, but we humans have the luxury of being able to have thoughts about our thoughts. So I can think about watching Miley Cyrus videos on YouTube and then immediately think about what a sicko I am for wanting to watch Miley Cyrus's videos on YouTube. Ah, the miracle of consciousness. Now here's the problem. Our society today, through the wonders of consumer culture, and hey, look at my life is cooler than yours, social media, has bred a whole generation of people who believe that having these negative experiences, anxiety, fear, guilt, etc., is totally not okay. I mean, if you look at your Facebook feed, everybody there is having a grand old time. Look, 8 people got married this week, and some 16-year-old on TV got a Ferrari for her birthday. And another kid just made $2 billion inventing an app that automatically delivers you more toilet paper when you run out. Meanwhile, you are stuck at home, flossing your cat, and you can't help but think your life sucks even more than you thought. The feedback loop from hell has become a borderline epidemic, making many of us overly stressed, overly neurotic, and overly self loathing. Back in Grandpa's days, he would feel like shit and think to himself, gee whiz, I sure do feel like a cow turd today. But hey, I guess that's just life. Back to shoveling hay. But now, if you feel like shit for even 5 minutes, you are bombarded with 350 images of people totally happy and having amazingly fucking lives. And it's impossible to not feel like there's something wrong with you. It's this last part that gets us into trouble. We feel bad about feeling bad. We feel guilty about feeling guilty. We get angry about getting angry. We get anxious about feeling anxious. What is wrong with me? This is why not giving up is so key. This is why it's going to save the world. And it's going to save it by accepting that the world is totally, and that's all right, because it's always been that way and always will be. By not giving up that you feel bad, you short circuit the feedback loop from hell. You say to yourself, I feel like shit, but who gives up? And then, as it sprinkles my magic giving fairy dust, you stop hating yourself for feeling so badly. George Orwell said that to see what's in front of one's nose requires a constant struggle. Well, the struggle to our stress and anxiety is right there in front of our noses, and we are too busy watching porn and advertisements for ab machines that don't work, wondering why we are not banging a hot blonde with a rocking six pack to notice. We joke online about first world problems, but we really have become victims of our own success. Stress related health issues, anxiety disorders, and cases of depression have skyrocketed over the past 30 years, despite the fact that everyone has a flat screen TV and can have their groceries delivered. Our crisis is no longer material, it's existential, it's spiritual. We have so much cooking stuff and so many opportunities that we don't even know what to give up about anymore. Because there's an infinite amount of things we can now see or know, there are also an infinite number of ways we can discover that we don't measure up, that we are not good enough, that things aren't as great as they could be. And this rips us apart inside. Because here's the thing that's wrong with all of the how to be happy shit that's been shared 8 million times on Facebook in the past few years. Here's what nobody realizes about all this crap. The desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. This is a total mind. So I'll give you a minute to unpretzelize your brain and maybe read that again. Wanting a positive experience is a negative experience. Accepting negative experience is a positive experience. It's what the philosopher Alan Watts used to refer to as the backwards law. The idea that the more you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become, as pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. The more you desperately want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you feel, regardless of how much money you actually have. The more you desperately want to be sexy and desired, the uglier you come to see yourself, regardless of your actual physical appearance. The more you desperately want to be happy and loved and lonelier and more afraid you become, regardless of those who surround you. The more you want to be spiritually enlightened, the more self centered and shallow you become in trying to get there. It's like this one time I tripped on acid and it felt like the more I walked towards a house, the further away the house got from me. And yes, I just used my LSD hallucinations to make a to make a philosophical point about happiness. No fucks given. As the existential philosopher Albert Camus said, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't on LSD at the time, you will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. Or put more simply, don't try. Now, I know what you are saying. Mark, this is making my nipples all hard. But what about the Camaro I've been saving up for? What about the beach body I've been starving myself for? After all, I paid a lot of money for that ab machine. What about the big house on the lake I've been dreaming of? If I stop giving up about these things, well, then I'll never achieve anything. I don't want that to happen, do I? So glad you asked. Ever notice that sometimes when you care less about something, you do better at it? Notice how it's often the person who is least invested in the success of something that actually ends up achieving it. Notice how sometimes when you stop giving up, everything seems to fall in place. What's with that? What's interesting about the backwards law is that it's called backwards for a reason. Not giving up works in reverse. If pursuing the positive is a negative, then pursuing the negative generates the positive. The pain you pursue in the gym results in better all round health and energy. The failures in business are what lead to a better understanding of what's necessary to be successful. Being open with your insecurities paradoxically makes you more confident and charismatic around others. The pain of honest confrontation is what generates the greatest trust and respect in your relationships. Suffering through your fears and anxieties is what allows you to build courage and perseverance. Seriously, I could keep going, but you get the point. Everything worthwhile in life is won through surmounting the associated negative experience. Any attempt to escape the negative, to avoid it, or quash it, or silence it only backfires. The avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering. The avoidance of struggle is a struggle. The denial of failure is a failure. Hiding what is shameful is itself a form of shame. Pain is an inextricable thread in the fabric of life, and to tear it out is not only impossible but destructive. Attempting to tear it out unravels everything else with it. To try to avoid pain is to give too many about pain. In contrast, if you are able to not give up about the pain, you become unstoppable. In my life, I have given up about many things. I have also not given up about many things. And like the road not taken, it was the not given that made all the difference. Chances are you know somebody in your life who, at one time or another, did not give up and then went on to accomplish amazing things. Perhaps there was a time in your own life when you simply did not give up and excelled to some extraordinary height. For myself, quitting my day job in finance after only 6 weeks to start an internet business ranks pretty high up there in my own Don't Give Up Hall of Fame. Same with deciding to sell most of my possessions and move to South America. Given? None. Just went and did it. These moments of non-curries are the moments that most define our lives. The major switch in careers, the spontaneous choice to drop out of college and join a rock band, the decision to finally dump that deadbeat boyfriend whom you caught wearing your pantyhose a few times too many. To not give up is to stare down life's most terrifying and difficult challenges and still take action. While not giving up may seem simple on the surface, it's a whole new bag of burritos under the hood. I don't even know what that sentence means, but I don't give up. A bag of burritos sounds awesome, so let's just go with it. Most of us struggle throughout our lives by giving too many in situations where do not deserve to be given. We give too many about the rude gas station attendant who gave us our change in nickels. We give too many when when a show we liked was cancelled on TV. We give too many when our co-workers don't bother asking us about our awesome weekend. Meanwhile, our credit cards are maxed out, our dog hates us, and Junior is snorting meth in the bathroom. Yet, we are getting pissed off about nickels and everybody loves Raymond. Look, this is how it works. You are going to die one day. I know that's kind of obvious, but I just wanted to remind you in case you had forgotten. You and everybody you know are going to be dead soon. And in the short amount of time between here and there, you have a limited amount of to give. Very few, in fact. And if you go around giving about everything and everyone without conscious thought or choice, well, then you are going to get. There is a subtle art to not giving up. And though the concept may sound ridiculous, and I may sound like an asshole, while what I'm talking about here is essentially learning how to focus and prioritize your thoughts effectively, how to pick and choose what matters to you and what does not matter to you based on finely honed personal values. This is incredibly difficult. It takes a lifetime of practice and discipline to achieve, and you will regularly fail, but it is perhaps the most worthy struggle one can undertake in one's life. It is perhaps the only struggle in one's life. Because when you give too many, when you give up about everyone and everything, you will feel that you are perpetually entitled to be comfortable and happy at all times, that everything is supposed to be just exactly the in way you want it to be. This is a sickness, and it will eat you alive. You will see every adversity as an injustice, every challenge as a failure, every inconvenience as a personal slight, every disagreement as a betrayal. You will be confined to your own petty skull sized hell, burning with entitlement and bluster, running circles around your very own personal feedback loop from hell, in constant motion, yet arriving nowhere. The subtle art of not giving up. When most people envision giving no whatsoever, they imagine a kind of serene indifference to everything, a calm that weathers all storms. They imagine and aspire to be a person who is shaken by nothing and caves in to no one. There's a name for a person who finds no emotion or meaning in anything: a psychopath. Why you would want to emulate a psychopath, I have no clue. So, what does not giving up mean? Let's look at three subtitles that should help clarify the matter. Subtlety one: not giving up does not mean being indifferent, it means being comfortable with being different. Let's be clear, there's absolutely nothing admirable or confident about indifference. People who are indifferent are lame and scared. They are couch potatoes and internet trolls. In fact, indifferent people often attempt to be indifferent because in reality, they give way too many. They give up about what everyone thinks of their hair, so they never bother washing or combing it. They give up about what everyone thinks of their ideas, so they hide behind sarcasm and self-righteous snark. They are afraid to let everyone get close to them, so they imagine themselves as some special, unique snowflake who has problems that nobody else would ever understand. Indifferent people are afraid of the world and the repercussions of their own choices. That's why they don't make any meaningful choices. They hide in a grey, emotionless pit of their own making, self absorbed and self pitying, perpetually distracting themselves from this unfortunate thing demanding their time and energy called life. Because here's a sneaky truth about life: there's no such thing as not giving up. You must give up about something. It's part of our biology to always care about something and therefore to always give up. The question then is, what do we give up about? What are we choosing to give up about? And how can we not give up about what ultimately does not matter? My mother was recently screwed out of a large chunk of money by a close friend of hers. Had I been indifferent, I would have shrugged my shoulders, sipped my mocha, and downloaded another season of The Wire. Sorry, Mom. But instead, I was indignant. I was pissed off. I said, no, screw that, Mom. We're going to lawyer up. We're going to lawyer the up and go after this asshole. Why? Because I don't give up. I will ruin this guy's life if I have to. This illustrates the first subtlety of not giving up. When we say, damn, watch out, Mark Manson, just don't give up, we don't mean that Mark Manson doesn't care about anything. On the contrary, on the contrary, we mean that Mark Manson doesn't care about adversity in the face of his goals. He doesn't care about pissing some people off to do what he feels is right or important or noble. We mean that Mark Manson is the type of guy who would write about himself in third person just because he thought it was the right thing to do. He just doesn't give a. This is what is so admirable. No, not me, dumbass. The overcoming adversity stuff, the willingness to be different, an outcast, a pariah, all for the sake of one's own values, the willingness to stare failure in the face and shove your middle finger back at it. The people who don't give a about adversity or failure, who are embarrassing themselves or shitting the bed a few times, the people who just laugh and then do what they believe in anyway because they know it's right. They know it's more important than they are, more important than their own feelings and their own pride and their own ego. They say it, not to everything in life, but rather to everything unimportant in life. They reserve their for what truly matters: friends, family, purpose, burritos, and an occasional lawsuit or two. And because of that, because they reserve their for only the big things that matter, people give up about them in return. Because here's another sneaky little truth about life: you can't be an important and life changing presence for some people without also being a joke and an embarrassment to others. You just can't. Because there's no such thing as a lack of adversity, it doesn't exist. The old saying goes that no matter where you go, there you are. Well, the same is true for adversity and failure. No matter where you go, there is a 500-pound load of shit waiting for you. And that's perfectly fine. The point isn't to get away from the shit. The point is to find the shit you enjoy dealing with. Subtlety number 2. To not give a about adversity, you must first give a about something more important than adversity. Imagine you're at the grocery store and you watch an elderly lady scream at the cashier, berating him for not accepting her 30-cent coupon. Why does this lady give up? It's just 30 cents. I'll tell you why. That lady probably doesn't have anything better to do with her days than to sit at home cutting out coupons. She's old and lonely. Her kids are dickheads and never visit. She hasn't had sex in over 30 years. She can't fart without extreme lower back pain. Her pension is on its last legs, and she's probably going to die in a diaper thinking she's in Candyland. So she snips coupons. That's all she's got. It's her and her damn coupons. It's all she can give a fuck about. Because there is nothing else to give a about. And so when that when that pimply-faced 17-year-old cashier refuses to accept one of them, then he defends his cash register's purity the way knights used to defend maidens' virginity. You can bet Granny is going to erupt. 80 years of will rain down all at once, like a fiery hailstorm of back in the day, and people used to show more respect stories. The problem with people who hand out like ice cream at a goddamn summer camp is that they don't have anything more worthy to dedicate their to. If you find yourself consistently giving too many about trivial shit that bothers you, your ex-boyfriend's new Facebook picture, how quickly the batteries die in the TV remote, missing out on yet another 2-for-1 sale on hand sanitizers, chances are you don't have much going on in your life to give a legitimate about. And that's your real problem, not the hand sanitizer, not the TV remote. I only heard an artist say, I once heard an artist say that when a person has no problems, the mind automatically finds a way to invent some. I think what most people What most people, especially educated, pampered, middle class, white people, consider life problems are really just side effects of not having anything more important to worry about. It then follows that finding something important and meaningful in your life is perhaps the most productive use of your time and energy. Because if you don't find that meaningful something, your will be given to meaningless and frivolous causes. Subject number 3. Whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing what to give up about. People aren't just born not giving up. In fact, we are born giving way too many. Even watching a kid cry his eyes out because his hat is in the wrong shade of blue. Exactly, that child. When we are young, everything is new and exciting, and everything seems to matter so much. Therefore, we give tons and tons of. We give about everything and everyone, about what people are saying about us, about whether that cute boy or cute girl called us back or not, about whether our socks match or not, or what color our birthday balloons are. As we get older, with the benefit of experience and having seen so much time slip by, we begin to notice that most of these sorts of things have little lasting impact on our lives. Those people whose opinions we cared about so much before are no longer present in our lives. Rejections that were painful in the moment have actually worked out for the best. We realize how little attention people pay to the superficial details about us, and we choose not to obsess so much over them. Essentially, we become more selective about the we are willing to give. This is something called maturity. It's nice. You should try it sometimes. Maturity is what happens when one learns to only give about what's truly worthy. As Buck Moreland said to his partner, Detective McNulty, in The Wire, which you I still downloaded. That's what you get for giving when it wasn't your turn to give up. Then, as we grow older and enter middle age, something else begins to change. Our energy level drops. Our identity solidifies. We know who we are and we accept ourselves, including some of the parts we aren't thrilled about. And in a strange way, this is liberating. We no longer need to give up about everything. Life is just what it is. We accept it, warts and all. We realize that we are never going to cure cancer or go to the moon or feel Jennifer Aniston tits. And that's okay. Life goes on. We now reserve our ever dwindling for the most truly worthy parts of our lives, our families, our best friends, our golf swing, and to our astonishment, this is enough. This supplication actually makes us really happy on a consistent basis. And we start to think maybe that crazy alcoholic Bukowski was onto something. Now, don't try. So, Mark, what is the point of this book anyway? This book will help you think a little bit more clearly about what you are choosing to find important in life and what you're choosing to find unimportant. I believe that today we are facing a psychological epidemic, one in which people no longer realize it's okay for things to suck sometimes. I know that sounds intellectually lazy on the surface, but I promise you, it's a life, death sort of issue. Because when we believe that it's not okay for things to suck sometimes, then we unconsciously start blaming ourselves. We start to feel as though something is inherently wrong with us, which drives us to all sorts of overcompensation, like buying 40 pairs of shoes or downing Xanax with a vodka chaser on a Tuesday night or shooting up a school bull full of kids. This belief that it's not okay to be inadequate sometimes is the source of the growing feedback loop from hell that is coming to dominate our culture. The idea of not giving up is a simple way of reorienting our expectations for life and choosing what is important and what is not. Developing this ability leads to something I like to think of as a kind of practical enlightenment. No, not that airy fairy, eternal bliss, end of all suffering, bullshitty kind of enlightenment. On the contrary, I see practical enlightenment as becoming comfortable with the idea that some suffering is always inevitable, that no matter what you do, life is comprised of failures, losses, regrets, and even death. Because once you become comfortable with all the shit that life throws at you, and it will throw a lot of shit, trust me, you become invincible in a sort of low level spiritual way. After all, the only way to overcome pain is to first learn how to bear it. This book doesn't give up about alleviating your problems or your pain, and that is precisely why you will know it's being honest. This book is not some guide to greatness. It couldn't be, because greatness is merely an illusion in our minds, a made up destination that we obligate ourselves to pursue, our own psychological Atlantis. Instead, this book will turn your pain into a tool, your trauma into power, and your problems into slightly better problems. That is real progress. Think of it as a guide to suffering and how to do it better, more meaningfully, with more compassion and more humility. It's a book about moving lightly despite your heavy burdens, resting easier with your greatest fears, laughing at your tears as you cry them. This book will not teach you how to gain or achieve, but rather how to lose and let go. It will teach you to take inventory of your life and scrub out all but the most important items. It will teach you to close your eyes and trust that you can fall backwards and still be okay. It will teach you to give fewer. It will teach you to not try. Beautiful. Maribel Cedeño. Maribel, ¿cómo está, mi amor? Look at the time. It is 3 o'clock in the morning, Maribel. Can you believe it? And here I am, up, reading. And I just decided, let me share this reading with you all. How are you doing, my love? Good to see you. Happy Tuesday morning to you. I'm going to continue reading this book, I guess, a chapter a day. Keep the devil away. Oh, wow. Chapter number 2 is a little bit long. Okay, we're going to continue reading. Chapter 2. Happiness. Happiness is a problem. About 2,500 years ago, in the Himalaya foothills of present-day Nepal, there lived in a great palace a king who was going to have a son. For his son, the king had a particularly grand idea. He would make the child's life perfect. The child would never know a moment of suffering. Every need, every desire would be accounted for at all times. The king built high walls around the palace that prevented the prince from knowing the outside world. He spoilt the child, lavishing him with food and gifts, surrounding him with servants who catered to his every whim. And just as planned, the child grew up ignorant of the routine cruelties of human existence. All of the prince's childhood went on like this. But despite the endless luxury and opulence, the prince became kind of a pissed off young man. Soon, every experience felt empty and valueless. The problem was that no matter what his father gave him, it never seemed enough, never meant anything. So late one night, the prince snuck out of the palace to see what was beyond its walls. He had a servant drive him through the local village, and what he saw horrified him. For the first time in his life, the prince For the first time in his life, the prince saw human suffering. He saw sick people, old people, homeless people, people in pain, even people dying. The prince returned to the palace and found himself in a sort of existential crisis. Not knowing how to process what he had seen, he got all emo about everything and complained a lot. And, as is so typical of a young man, the prince ended up blaming his father for the very things his father had tried to do for him. It was the riches, the prince thought, that had made him so miserable, that had made life seem so meaningless. He decided to run away. But the prince was more like his father than he knew. He had grand ideas too. He wouldn't just run away, he would give up his royalty, his family, and all of his possessions and live in the streets, sleeping in the dirt like an animal. There he would starve himself, torture himself, and beg for scraps of food from strangers for the rest of his life. The next night, the prince snuck out of the palace again, this time never to return. For years he lived as a bum, a discarded and forgotten remnant of society, the dog shit caked to the bottom of the social totem pole. And as planned, the prince suffered greatly. He suffered through disease, hunger, pain, loneliness, and decay. He confronted the brink of death itself, often limited to eating a snuggle nut each day. A few years went by, then a few more, and then a few more. Nothing happened. The prince began to notice that this life of suffering wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. It wasn't bringing him the insight he had desired. It wasn't revealing any deeper mystery of the world or its ultimate purpose. In fact, the prince came to know what the rest of us had already known, that suffering totally sucks, and it's not necessarily that meaningful either. As with being rich, there is no value in suffering when it's done without purpose. And soon the prince came to the conclusion that his grand idea, like his father's, was in fact a terrible idea, and he should probably go do something else instead. Totally confused, the prince cleansed himself up and went and found a big tree near a river. He decided that he would sit under that tree and not get up until he came up with another grand idea. As the legend goes, the confused prince sat under that tree for 49 days. We won't delve into the biological variabilities of sitting in the same spot for 49 days, but let's just say that in that time, the prince came to a number of profound realizations. One of those realizations was this: that life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their riches. The poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family. People with a family suffer because of their family. People who pursue worldly pleasures suffer because of their worldly pleasures. People who abstain from worldly pleasures suffer because of their abstinence. This isn't to say that all suffering is equal. Some suffering is certainly more painful than other suffering, but we all must suffer nonetheless. Years later, the prince would build its own philosophy and share it with the world, and this would be its first and central tenet: that pain and loss are inevitable, and we should let go of trying to resist them. The prince would later become known as the Buddha, and in case you haven't heard of him, he was kind of a big deal. There, in a pres- in a premise, in a premise that underlies a lot of our assumptions and beliefs. The premise is that happiness is algorithmic, that it can be worked for and earned and achieved as if it were getting accepted to law school or building a really complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I can be happy. If I look like Y, then I can be happy. If I can be with a person like Z, then I can be happy. This premise, though, is the problem. Happiness is not a solvable equation. Dissatisfaction and unease are inherent parts of human nature and, as we'll see, necessary components to creating consistent happiness. The Buddha argued this from a theological and a philosophical perspective. I will make the same argument in this chapter, but I will make it from a biological perspective and with pandas. Maribel says, here it's 2:15 in the morning. Okay, yeah, you're 1 hour behind. Oh yeah, you're 1 hour behind me. That is the thing. So you are going to bed late, or did you go to sleep and wake up just now? Because I slept a little bit already. I went to sleep around maybe around 9:30, 10-ish, maybe 10. And then I woke up at around a little bit about 1 o'clock. And I just decided to pick up my phone and start reading my Kindle. I'm always finding interesting books on there. Sometimes I don't share the books, but sometimes I do. And this one seems to be a very, very interesting book with a lot of um, alternative perspective on life. And as the author here, Mark says, life, what makes you happy could also be what makes you sad. The things that you desire could be the things that you don't desire. It's how you look at life. It's your perspective, you know, what you consider to be happiness. You say losing weight might make you happy, but losing weight might also make you sad. It says being rich can make you happy, but it can also make you sad. So every component of life that has that appears to have a happy ending can also have a sad ending. And I like his perspective on life. I like it so far. So we are going to continue. We are going to continue to read this book. Whenever I read, we will read together. So stay with me, guys. Those of you who were not in the live this morning and are coming on to listen to the reading after this live has ended, I hope you all enjoyed the reading as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Thanks to Mark Manson for this lovely novel here. I don't know if I should call it a novel, but this lovely book here. We will continue to read it, my friends. And that's going to be it from me for this morning. Join me again later on when we will continue with our Bible reading. Don't forget that we gather here each morning to read the Bible. All right, we are going to be doing our Bible reading this morning in about the next 40 minutes. All right, that's going to be it from me for right now, my friends. Until next time, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great morning, everybody.